You're listening to the Study Podcast with Dr. Paul Wegner. I'm your host, Tyler Sanders, and instead of the Hebrew word of the day, Dr. Wegner is going to give us a little bit of information about the book that we're studying today, why it's in this order, and then we'll get to the Hebrew.
Okay, sounds good. So we're doing Zephaniah today, and the key of this is the day of the Lord. And basically through the book, it says there's going to be a purging, and that purging is going to get basically what purging did is it was like fire, right? And it burned away all the filth and stuff like that and left the good stuff. Yeah. So Zephaniah is basically about that. But what I wanted to talk to you about is the order of these books. I don't know if you remember, but I think we talked about that we're trying to do this in the best chronological order that we can.
Right.
Now, some of them are not dated, so it's really hard to know, but some of them are dated, so that gives us some clues. So I'm trying to do the best I can to give them in an order that actually makes sense. And the reason that's so important is because when you know the history about when it's taking place, the events that it's talking about will make a lot more sense. So,
sure.
So if it talks about, they're really wicked and stuff like that, well, that makes sense if you know when historically it is. So that's why we want to do it as close to the history as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good to me.
All right. So that gives us the first part of it. Mm-hmm. The second thing I wanted to do is to talk about names. And I think we did this once before, but often the name has either the name Yahweh or Elohim in it. So Zephaniah actually has God has hidden. Okay. So it's and actually it's the word Yahweh has hidden. So it's what I wanted to show you is that Zephaniah and the name Yahweh can be spelled a shortened form two different ways. It can be Yah or Yahoo. And you even have that in the biblical text. So in 2 Kings, Zephaniah has the U at the end in 2 Kings. But in Jeremiah 37:3, it also has that. So Zephaniah. Okay. But in Jeremiah, the rest of the passages where his name occurs, it doesn't have the shurik or the U at the end. So it's just Yah. Okay. Yeah. And so you probably know like names like Isaiah. It has the name Yahweh, the shortened form of at the end. Or the other name is Emmanuel. That word El in the end is God, or Daniel. So if you see the name and you can find the which divine name is at the end, you'll know how the word is kind of put together, how the name is put together. Sure. So I think that helps us understand it a little more. The name Zephaniah means Yahweh has hidden. And
interesting.
And I think it's got something to do with the hiddenness of the day of the Lord, that then he's revealing more about what the day of the Lord is. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, there's one other thing, because I figured you would feel cheated if you didn't get a real Hebrew thing out of this. So what I did is, in the biblical text, you almost always have the word priest. It's a real common word. Kohanim is plural for priest. There are 3 times where there's a word for an idolatrous priest. It only occurs 3 times, but then you know that it's a bad priest, not a good priest. Now, and most of them are, you got it here in actually Zephaniah. And now remember, historically, Manasseh is the worst king in all of Israel for taking Israel into wickedness. Well, during Zephaniah's time is one of the times that you hear about these wicked priests or idolatrous priests. And the name is actually kind of similar to our, remember I told you Kohanim is a word for priest. Well, this one is Kamarim. So it's interesting. But it sounds a little like it, but it's a totally different word, and it's letting you know the wickedness. So that was interesting. You don't see that very often. So
you have some numbers next to those words. Actually, it's
then go back.
Priest shows up far more times than idolatrous priest.
Yeah.
There's really only, you found three examples of idolatrous priest compared to more than 650 examples of priest.
Yeah. So that gives you some
very
clue.
Fascinating.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's get into Zephaniah. I've titled it The Day of the Lord. It has a superscription like most of them do. So the first verse is that. But then it's got two basic parts to the book. The first one talks about the day of the Lord as being judgment. The other one is the day of the Lord as being restoration. Now, we've heard about the day of the Lord in some of the passage or in some of the books earlier in this. And there's always a little new element that's being added to it. The one here is that now the day of the Lord has two parts to it. It has restoration and judgment. So initially, the first time you heard it in Amos, and the people were the Israelites were longing for the day of the Lord, because in their understanding, God was going to punish the wicked in the day of the Lord, and they figured they were righteous. So God was going to punish all their enemies. Well, what Amos was trying to tell them is, that's not true at all. You're wicked too, so you're going to get some punishment. So by Zephaniah's time, now you've got both elements that are added. Okay? So I'll show you another slide later, but I just wanted you to see it's got two elements to that idea of the day of the Lord. In the New Testament, when you get towards, you often hear in that day or the day of the Lord. If it's a day of the Lord, it's usually a more general kind of, or in this, if it's plural, the days of the Lord or something like that. It's more like from the time of Christ on. When you get when you get the singular day of the Lord, that's pretty much talking about the end time when God's going to finish his judgment and redeem his people. So sometimes you can see that, but in the Old Testament, you've got this building theme, and it starts in like the 800 BCs, and Zephaniah is more in the 600s. So it's starting to build now, and you're getting new elements added to it.
Yeah. And what's building is like an anticipation, basically. Right?
Yeah.
That things are going to be made right in some way.
Yes. Yep. So in the first part where it's talking about judgment, it's judgment against Judah, then Judah's enemies, and then against Jerusalem. So the Israelites didn't realize that it was going against them too. Yeah, so Zephaniah is making that real clear. Then it talks about the day of the Lord being restoration. And it's got three parts to that: among the restoration of the nations, then of Israel, and then more specifically of Zion itself. Yeah. So it's starting to broaden, not just the idea of it's deliverance for Israel, but it's actually restoration for other nations too. So that's kind of a new thing for Zephaniah.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Let me read the key verse, or this, what I think it is. Therefore, wait for me, declares the Lord, for the day that I will raise up to the prey. Indeed, my decision is to gather nations, to assemble kingdoms, and to pour out on them my indignation, all my burning anger. For all the Lord will be devoured by the fire of my zeal. For then I will give the people purified lips, that all of them may call on the name of the Lord to serve him shoulder to shoulder. And notice God's anger is always directed at punishment to bring about a restoration. So that, notice that idea when it says they're going to have purified lips. That idea is they're now going to have pure words and motives and stuff like that. So you can see God's doing some amazing work here.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. All right, here's the day of the Lord. In Amos, the day of the Lord was destruction and punishment. So almost all negative. Micah, it was in that day, it was destruction and restoration, but was mostly directed at Israel. Then Zephaniah talks about the day of the Lord being destruction and restoration for all nations. Okay. And then Joel, the day of the Lord is destruction and restoration and a purging of God's people. So it gets real specifically that it's God's people. And then that goes into the New Testament day of the Lord.
Yeah.
So So it's like a building theme as it goes along.
A development.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Purpose is announcing judgment, coming judgment in the day of the Lord. It's got to be before Nineveh is destroyed in 612. So that actually sets kind of a date, because it talks about Nineveh still being an enemy. So they could no longer be that after 612. If that's true, then the historical background's got to be somewhere during Josiah's reign or before. What had just happened is Manasseh and Ammon were like the wickedest kings in all Israel. So Israel had been led down into real bad wickedness. Then Josiah comes and he tries bringing them back to God. The problem is by that time they'd gone so far into into wickedness that God was going to have to punish them. So he couldn't really turn them around because they didn't want to be turned around. They were pretty wicked. Right. There's no reason to question that it's Zephaniah. We know, that his authorship, we know very little about him. So, whether it's Zephaniah or not, it's not going to make much difference because we don't know hardly anything about him. The only thing we know is found in chapter 1, verse 1. And we'll look at that. Okay. All right. His name means hidden, or Yahweh has hidden. And we talked about that. Okay. In verse 1, it's kind of neat because he's actually related to Hezekiah. Oh, interesting. Do you remember now, Hezekiah, for Zephaniah, he's probably almost not quite 100 years earlier. But remember, Hezekiah was a good king. Yeah. And I actually would argue he's one of the best kings. Josiah does what he can to bring him back, but it's actually too late. But what's interesting is Zephaniah is in his line. So let me show you what the verse 1 says. The word of the Lord which came to Zephaniah, son of Cushi, son of Gedaliah, son of Amariah, son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, son of Ammon, king of Judah. So that gets you back. It's almost like giving his pedigree. Okay. And I think that's important because Zephaniah is in the line of Hezekiah, which is actually really important. Okay. Does that make sense? It's connecting it back to a time when God was doing his best to bring the nation along and having them be obedient. And Hezekiah was one of them, did that. So I think if anything, he's kind of probably pretty proud that he's in the line of Hezekiah.
So and the value is more that Hezekiah was a good king.
Yes.
So you're connecting back, not so much just that like Zephaniah is somehow in a royal line or something like that.
Yeah,
it's more that he's a good king.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then Josiah is the king at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get into the text. We've got the day of the Lord, and we're in the first part, so it's on judgment, and it's the first 3. It gets into chapters 1, 2, and the first part of 3. Okay, and the first thing it does is it says that there's going to be the day of the Lord there's going to be punishment for Judah. Okay. And it gives really good reasons. It talks about there's a remnant of Baal in this place. Remember, Baal was the false god that they continued to worship. It talked about the idolatrous priests. And in Isaiah, it talks about how much he hates false priests because they pretend that they're for God, but they're turning them away from God. Yeah. Right. And those who bow down to the hosts of heaven. The ancient Near East had people that worshipped the sun and moon and stuff like that. So he's saying, here's these people have now gone full blown into astral worship and stuff. Okay, and then here's another jab: those who swear by Yahweh and Milcom. That's got to make God mad. Here's a true God, Yahweh, and a false God, and they're worshiping them both to see what they can get out of either of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the last one is they've turned their back on following Yahweh. So those are Judah's sins. It makes it real clear why God's punishing them.
Yeah.
Here's what it says. I will completely remove all the things from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. I will remove man and beast. I will remove the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea and the ruins along with the wicked. And I will cut off man from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. So I will stretch out my hand against Judah and against all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, and the names of the idolatrous priests along with the priests. And those who have bowed down to the house on the housetops to the hosts of heaven, and those who bowed down and swore to the Lord and yet swear by Milcom, and those who have turned back from following the Lord, and those who have not sought the Lord or inquired of him. So there, right there is a whole list of Judah's sins. And now, if this was Israel, the northern kingdom, you'd expect it, but you don't expect this from Judah. They were the ones that were supposed to stay pure for God.
Right.
Okay. Right. Does all those make sense? Milcom was a false god too, along with Baal. Okay. Yeah. All right. The next 6 or so verses have more of Judah's sins. So it talks about princes who clothe themselves with foreign garments. And you're going, what's wrong with that? We wear clothes that are made in other places. But that,
right.
Yeah, but that means that they've probably made alliances with these foreign nations, and that's why they're wearing their garments. And those who leap over the temple thresholds, we know of what that means is because of what Jonah or the Philistines and what I don't know if you remember, Dagon fell on the doorpost of the baseboard or whatever, the threshold of the temple, and they jump over it. They became something that they didn't want to. They didn't, they thought it was bad luck not to. Well, so now our Israelites are doing that, to worship other gods. Yeah. They fill the Lord's house with violence and deceit. Those who weigh out silver. Okay, what's wrong with weighing out silver? My guess is they're weighing it out falsely, and probably giving it to false gods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then those who say that God will not act.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So they're actually claiming that God, they can live as wicked as they want. And don't worry, God's not going to harm us. Yeah. So God's response to that is what's called the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord, when the things are going to be made right. And he makes it real clear, judgment is coming. In fact, this next part tells us, it says, be silent before the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is near, for the Lord is preparing a sacrifice. He has consecrated his guests. Then it will come about on the day of the Lord's sacrifice. I will punish the princesses, the king's sons, and all who clothe themselves with foreign garments. I will punish on that day all who leap on the temple threshold, who fill the house of their Lord with violence and deceit. It will come about at that time. I will search Jerusalem with lamps, and I will punish the men who are stagnant in spirit, who say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good or evil. So they're thinking God can't do anything. Yeah. Moreover, their wealth will become plunder and their houses desolate. Yes, they will build houses, but not inhabit them, and plant vineyards, but not drink their wine. So here's the day of the Lord's coming. He's telling them it's near, and these are the kind of people that are going to feel the brunt of it. Okay? Yeah. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
He goes in and gives us even more. In verse 14, near is the great day of the Lord, near and coming very quickly. Listen, the day of the Lord, it is as a warrior cries out bitterly. A day of wrath is that day, a day of trouble and distress. You can see pretty clearly he's letting them have it, isn't he?
Yeah.
And verse 16, the day of the trumpet and battle cry against the fortified cities and the high corner towers. That battle cry meant that enemies were going to come against them in battle. Okay? I will bring distress on men so that they will walk like the blind because they have sinned against the Lord. In the Old Testament, blindness is often talked about as not being able to see the right way. And so these people are walking away from God down the wrong path. And so he pictures them as being blind.
Yeah.
And their blood will be poured out like dust and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to deliver them on the day of the Lord's wrath. And I think that's important because they probably thought that their finances would get them out of any problems. So by storing up silver and gold, they thought they were protecting themselves. God says, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
All the earth will be devoured in the fire of his jealousy, for he will make a complete and indeed a terrifying one of all the inhabitants of the earth. It sounds to me an awful lot like the Book of Revelation, doesn't it?
Right.
Where God's pouring out his wrath. And actually, that's how the day of the Lord ends. The Book of Revelation is kind of like the conclusion to the day of the Lord. Yeah. But looks like what's happening is there's also days of the Lord, multiple punishments that lead up to that major one. Does that make sense? So there'll be a time when the Assyrians come through and wipe out the Israelites. There'll be a time when the Babylonians come. So they're getting little days of the Lord, but they're all looking forward to one ultimate day of the Lord when God will punish them.
Yeah, and it's kind of universal in a sense.
Yeah.
Like no one escapes it. Everyone is going to be judged.
Yeah. And then we know that from the Book of Revelation too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Now, the second section is against Judah's enemies. Now, this is the part the Israelites like. They didn't like that first part, but now they're thinking, oh, good. The Philistines, Moab and Ammon, Ethiopia and Assyria, all of these basically had been enemies of Israel throughout the history. And he makes it clear that God's going to judge them too. So remember, I think initially you had said that this is a time when God's going to make everything right.
Yeah.
So even the wicked people are going to be punished. But what they didn't understand is they were going to be punished too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This probably felt like a making of right to them.
Yeah.
That their enemies are going to get their punishment.
Right. Verse 3 says, seek the Lord, all you humble of the earth who have carried out his ordinances. Seek righteousness, seek humility. Perhaps you will be hidden in the day of the Lord's anger. There's the term. Right? So my guess is that's why Zephaniah is called Zephaniah. Yahweh has hidden. The idea of hiding his people when the day of the Lord's anger is being poured out.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. A lot of times these prophets have a name that fits with the book real well.
Yeah.
There's one more section that's in here that kind of helps us, and that's verse 10 and 11. They will have in their return for their pride, because they have taunted and become arrogant against the people of the Lord's hosts. The Lord will be terrifying to them, for he will starve all the gods of the earth, and all the coastlines of the nations will bow down to him, everyone from his own place. That one's kind of interesting because now God's punishing the whole world. And so Judah's enemies, but the whole nations that have gone against God.
So when they say coastlands of the nations, do you think that's kind of meaning like the extremities, like the borders or something?
Yep, I'm very sure that is. Now, in their minds, that would be the Mediterranean Sea. But remember, the Mediterranean Sea was quite. Even Jonah knew about trying to get as far away as Tarshish, right? So they knew, and I'm sure the coastlands would have been the Mediterranean Sea and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All
right, good job. Here's a little more. And he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria. And he will make Nineveh a desolation, parched like the wilderness. Flocks will lie down in her midst, and all the beasts will range in herds. Both the pelican and the hedgehog will lodge in the tops of her pillars. Birds will sing in the windows. Desolation will be on the threshold. Oh, when it says birds will sing in the windows, meaning there's not going to be anyone in those windows to keep birds away. The
animals have taken over, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. All right. For he has laid bare the cedar work. This is the exultant city which dwells securely, who says in her heart, I am, and there's none beside me. Now how she has become a desolation, a resting place for the beast. Everyone who passes will hiss and wave their hand in contempt. I don't know. We don't know. We several times see that kind of thing of hissing and waving of a hand like in Isaiah. There's the Assyrian is on Mount Nob, it says, and he waves his hand over Assyria to mean away with Jerusalem, and here, so he's having contempt for him. So this is probably God's paying back of their contempt for his people. Now he's paying them back.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Now, so we've just been through Judah and then the other Judah's enemies. Now it goes against Jerusalem. We're in the chapter 3, the first 8 verses, and it tells why. She's rebellious and defiled. She heeds no voice. Oh, I think I've got some verses to show you that. Woe to her who is rebellious and defiled, the tyrannical city. She heeded no voice and accepted no instruction. She did not trust in the Lord. She did not draw near to her God. Her princes within her are roaring lions. Her judges are wolves at evening. I think that's kind of interesting. So their judges are going after, who can they rip off this week or this? Yeah.
Right.
So they leave nothing for the morning. Her prophets are reckless and treacherous men. Her priests have profaned the sanctuary. They have done violence to the law. Wow. So that makes it real clear why they're being punished.
Right. All the leaders, really.
Yeah.
All the people who are supposed to kind of maintain the nation in a way.
Yep. Okay, now we're on the last part of the book. We've got the day of the Lord. Now it turns to restoration. So we just had almost 3 chapters of punishment on all the wicked. Now we've got 10, 11 so verses about what God's going to do to restore the nation. It doesn't seem quite equal, but yeah.
Right.
All right. So here, the first part of it says Yahweh's restoration of the nations, verse 9 through 10. God is going to be purifying them, and it's going to be open to many nations. Look what this says. Therefore, wait for me, declares the Lord, for the day when I raise up a witness. Indeed, my decision is to gather nations, to assemble kingdoms, to pour out on them my indignation, all my burning anger, for all the earth will be devoured by fire, by my zeal. For then, so here's what's going to happen after God pours out his wrath. For then I will give the people purified lips. All of them may call on the name of the Lord to serve him shoulder to shoulder. Remember, that was the key verse that I had mentioned earlier. Shoulder to shoulder. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my worshipers, my dispersed ones will bring my offerings. Now that's kind of interesting because it's saying those people that have been dispersed all over are now going to come back to me. So, and Ethiopia was like, Ethiopia is on the south of Egypt.
Yeah.
So it's in their minds, that's like coming from the most distance possible.
The edges.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. So that's the first part. Then there's a restoration of Israel, verses 11 through 13. There's going to be a remnant. Remember we talked about that remnant idea? I think it starts in Micah, the idea of a remnant. But that idea is that God's going to purify the nation and then bring out a pure people that will serve God.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what it says about that, because it's got the verses here. In that day, you will feel no shame because of all your deeds by which you have rebelled against me. Because he's going to remove them. For then I will remove from your midst your proud, exalted ones, and you will never again be haughty on my holy mountain. Using my holy mountain as Zion. So there's going to be purity there.
Yeah.
But I will leave among you a humble and lowly people. They will take refuge in the name of the Lord. The remnant of Israel will do no wrong and tell no lies, nor will a deceitful tongue be found in their mouths, for they will feed and lie down with no one to make them tremble. That means they're going to be at peace and they're not going to have to worry about anyone. Shout for joy, O daughter of Zion. Shout in triumph, O Israel. Rejoice and exult in your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. So he's telling them that for sure, one of these days, there's going to be a purified nation living in Jerusalem, I think.
Yeah, right.
All right. And now we got one more, God's glorification of Zion. So what even that last chapter talked about, or last couple of verses talked about Zion being purified.
Right.
Now you've got like 6 verses talking about that. I'm just going to read part of them. The Lord your God is in your midst, a victorious warrior. He will exalt over you with joy. He will be quiet in his love. He will rejoice over you with shouts of joy. I will gather those who grieve about the appointed feasts. Apparently what was happening is the feasts were being corrupted, so nobody cared. So he's saying those who grieve that those were being corrupted are now going to be there, and they'll be restored. They came from you, O Zion. The reproach of exile is a burden on them. So even people who the exile, they're sorry for it. They turned away from God, but now they're sorry. And this next one is really interesting. Behold, I'm going to deal at that time with all your oppressors. I will save the lame and gather the outcasts. Remember, God's always for the weak and the lowly and those that can't take care of themselves. So they're pictured here as the ones that are lame and outcasts. They've been brought together as a remnant, a righteous remnant for God.
Yeah, right.
And I will turn their shame into praise and renown in all the earth. At that time I will bring in you, and even at that time I will gather you together. Indeed, I will give you renown and praise among all the peoples of the earth. And I will restore your fortunes before your eyes, says the Lord. In just this chapter is not very long, right? I mean, it's like 10 verses, but it's got a core of what Isaiah said in almost 40 chapters, or not quite 40 chapters, but a lot of them. And he's saying in just a few words how the nation is going to be restored and how God's going to make them joyful and worshiping him. Yeah. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's very neat. Yeah.
Well, this one's a short one.
We made it. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I ask you this question, let me ask you, do you see what Zephaniah has a picture of what God's going to do for not only Israel, but all the other nations? What's the picture look like?
Yeah. It's, proportionally, it's more judgment.
Yeah.
If you just look at word count, I think. But I think the idea, use that word purging earlier. Yeah. There's a cleansing kind of element to this of like, there's going to be a judgment that is going to ultimately kind of finally deal with wickedness. Yeah. But there will be inside of that a remnant. There will be like a holy people from all nations. We see kind of in, we definitely see that in Revelation. By the end, that's super clear. But I think there's an anticipation here in Isaiah as well that like God has a plan for the nations in the Old Testament too. Like it's evident. So that there's going to be this remnant that worships God and has, basically a right relationship with him. Yeah. Good. Okay. What's the purpose of this book and why is the day of the Lord so important? Yeah. I do think it's definitely forward looking and it's defining in greater detail what the day of the Lord is going to entail, who's going to be a recipient of punishment on the day of the Lord. Okay. And I do think the importance too is there is this kind of anticipatory nature. I do think there's something about it's a warning for people, but there also is some comfort in there, I think, too, that like God is going to make things right. Yeah. Like the warning is that you need to be sure where you stand in relation to God when this happens. But there's something hopeful about that too, that like, I think that's what's comforting even today as Christians, that like when we live in a world that's so marked and just marred by evil and we see just wickedness happening and injustice, that ultimately God has an answer to those things. Yeah. And there is something comforting about that ultimately everything's going to be made right. Yeah. Is God justified in punishing them? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. That whole first couple of chapters was that, wasn't it? Going right down, telling the list of why he's doing it.
Oh, go on.
particularly when you see too, like all the leaders, right? It's like
Yeah.
the judges they're like wolves, you
Yeah.
know, like they're there to make sure that things are done, that there is balance, you know, and that justice is done, and they're acting like wolves, and the priests are acting immorally. All these things that these kind of structures have been just corrupted, you know, and so I it's definitely
good.
He's justified. Yeah.
Okay. What do we learn about God in this? Oh, wait, before I ask that, do you remember how always everybody says, oh, God is a loving God and all that? That's true, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
So this doesn't contradict that, does it?
Right. And I think, I kind of related to that. I do think related to that idea is this kind of oversimplified idea that that's the New Testament God. New Testament God is loving. Old Testament God is angry and vengeful.
Yeah.
And that's too simplistic of a way of breaking things down. And I do think there's unity between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we see, especially in these minor prophets and the major prophets too, we see both of these aspects of God. I think theologically we wouldn't call them two aspects. It's one aspect. It's just who God is. That his justice and his love are, you know, outworkings of his love. Basically. That those things are related. But I mean, you see both in the Old Testament. You do see that God is absolutely merciful, and that he does care for the nations. He cares for more than just his chosen people. He's concerned with all of creation, and acts out of love, and punishment is a part of that. Correction is a part of this.
Good. I think you've answered the second question. So what do we learn about God in this book? You've already that he's a good heavenly Father, right?
That's right. Right.
All right. Is there any new concepts about the day of the Lord that we learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we think of kind of like a history of Revelation, or like the progression of Revelation, it does seem like this one maybe is telling us a bit more about God's plan for the rest of the world. Yeah. You know, that it's not just there's a day of judgment coming for God's people, for Israel and Judah. Yeah. But it's for all nations, and that there's something that's going to happen. Yeah. There's a restoration that's going to be part of that too. It's not just punishment.
And I think you talked about this earlier, but the idea of things are finally going to be made right. Yeah. That if nothing else, that's the biggest picture you get in the idea of the day of the Lord, that wickedness will not prevail. God is going to make sure that wickedness is punished and the righteous are blessed. Yeah.
That's where things are headed.
We can't probably end on a better note than that, can we?
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah.
Well, so that's Zephaniah. We'll try to get into the next prophet when we, and it sounds like we have Habakkuk next. So that one's a fun one. I enjoy it too.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for your time today, Dr. Wagner.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.